Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everybody hear? Okay. My name is Roy Lahericia, and I'll chair the meeting. Unfortunately, Grant Jennings, who was due to do so, fell ill today. The routine, which you probably know, is that each candidate will speak for 3 minutes about themselves and their policies, and that will be followed by questions, and there will be 2 questions at a time, and there will be 2 minutes devoted to each of those. No, 2 minutes devoted to the 2 questions. And we'll just carry on that way till 9 o'clock. So it's very nice to see you all. You all obviously gave up your night clubbing to be here. And timing will be done by Rosemary, who's most kindly stepped in late in the day. So let's start with Judy Martin.
Thank you, Roy, for chairing at short notice. Yes, I'm Judy Martin. I've been one of your deputies in this district, which was called Number 1 and now is St Helier South for over 20 years. This is my 8th election. I think I've always been contactable. I listen to people. I've worked with people. I put a petition together to stop the 800 space car park plan for Ancourt, and now people are moving into homes there. In the last 4 years, I was privileged to be asked to be the Social Security Minister. I say I'm privileged because I think nobody knew COVID was coming, but what it was. But we did still get things done. I've increased paternity leave and for a year for each parent. I've increased the benefits. I put the ceiling up for the higher earner from 160,000 to 250,000, and that money paid for the extra weeks from 18 to 32 weeks. In the district, we've worked with the Half the Par group. We've got a fantastic improvement plan ready to go, and we want to see it implemented. The town park must be fully extended. There's so much housing going around there. I know there's needs for schools, but once you lose that open space, it's not coming back. And the waterfront, we've just started working with the residents there, and there's some really good plans. We don't want to see them go backwards either, because it really needs to be a place, a vibrant waterfront where you can go, families can go, people want to live, and there's lovely restaurants. Also, in the just before we went into PARDA, I brought in a cost of living temporary scheme. It is for the income support people and those just about managing pensioners. It's £40 a month extra for pensioners and £80 a month for a family of 4. Temporary scheme, there's another, I'm working with another group of politicians and officers, so they'll be ready to go for businesses and people above that once a new council has come in. And basically, I still have a lot more work to do. I've been in charge of disability, diversity, inclusion. I've got a good budget for that now. I've got great officers, but really, it's just started, and I need somebody like me to keep pushing for that money, working with the team and making sure that the lives for disabled people is made much better. So this is me, and if you want me, please vote for me again on the 22nd.
Thank you. It's very cosy up here. It's a good thing. It's a good thing we're all friends. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming. I've been listening to and watching as many of the hustings as I can. We're not pounding the streets. And there are a few recurring themes as regards housing. This is no criticism of the candidates. It's good that we're on the same page. But I want to set the record straight on a few issues. I am already stopping foreign investors buying property in Jersey. That was one of the first actions I took when I became Housing Minister just 15 months ago. We're doing it by not issuing licences for the conveyance of properties via share transfer. We don't need to do that anymore because we now have flying freehold legislation. So we've stopped new foreign investors buying property in Jersey, new property in Jersey. I have to caveat that by saying existing share transfer properties can still be conveyanced in that way. We haven't found the legal route yet to change that, but we're working on it. Secondly, I am setting up the Rent Tribunal. That is in train now. In fact, the full-time officer for it, the chairman and the 3 tribunal members are being recruited as we speak. I'm using the old legislation, it is very old, to get this Rent Tribunal up and running so that people have a point of appeal, but they will also be charged, the officer and the members of it, with rewriting the rent control law to make it fit for purpose for the 21st century. And coupled with that, we are completely redrafting and rewriting the residential tenancy law. And that will surface the draft of it. I've issued the law drafting instructions. That'll come to the Assembly, I think, in September or October, and then we will have a full consultation with all the main players, tenants groups, landlords, landlord groups, etc. But the idea is, we really do want to give people a secure rental experience, a safe rental experience, with no nasty financial surprises, and ideally, as standard, people taking longer tenancies and not having rent increases above RPI annually, and no hidden surprise costs when tenancies are renewed, etc. So that's what we're working on in brief. There's lots of other stuff in there too, including a landlord's registry. So that will be part of it too. And I am setting up a government shared equity scheme. Interfering in the housing market fiscally is difficult. Sometimes, is that me up? No. Oh, I hope somebody might ask me a question about that and I'll answer it. Okay.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming out on a Friday evening, 7 till 9. My name's David Waugh. As the owner of Cooper & Company that employs 30 individuals and trades mostly in South St Helier, I completely understand the issues that make a difference to my team and our customers. Summed up, they are housing, food, and childcare costs. I'm standing because I want to help create conditions that enable people and businesses to fulfil their potential and improve the standard of living and well-being of all islanders. With regard to housing, is the Housing Gateway sufficiently inclusive? An email I received from Pam suggests not, and I've had plenty of those. Why does the public sector rent level need to track those of the private sector? That needs to be challenged as well. We need the Council of Ministers to take back control of housing to make sure that the current strategy is fit for purpose. Turning to tax, the 0-10 regime is complicated. It was set up to ensure our finance industry remain competitive in a global market, but it came with local costs. Is it still fit for purpose? I hear the calls for GST to be removed from food. Whilst I'm not against the idea, despite an earlier Twitter commentary, it will have a major impact on government revenue. I don't want to see solutions that result in Middle Jersey paying more of the island's tax bill. We need to broaden the free school meal offer to ensure that all children get at least one decent meal a day, but most importantly, we must never forget that in a civilized society, it is unacceptable to have to choose between heating and eating. The cost of building our new hospital is totally out of hand and risks mortgaging future generations. I don't wish to seek out a new site. I simply want to see the existing hospital remain where it is, with Overdale focusing on recuperative care and great new staff accommodation. We need to pause, but we also need to deliver, and there are the people on island capable of doing this. I want a singular vision for the future of the whole of St Helier. The current fragmented approach is a disaster. We need better green spaces. Millennium Park must be extended to St Saviour's Road, and we need solutions for the future of Fort Regent. We have a major demographic time bomb on our hands. How will we, as a community, adapt in our older population? I'd like to help guide that process and hope that you will vote for me on June the 22nd.
Good evening, and thank you to all for taking the time to join us this evening. I'm Tom Coles, and I'm a Reform Jersey candidate. A little about me and why I'm running. I'm 40 years old and married. I've worked for a large private security company for the past 18 years, and I'm currently the operations manager for our records management department. My wife is self-employed within the allied health sector. Our joint income would be seen by many to be a comfortable amount for any couple to live on. However, where we are now is not where a late 30s, early 40s couple should aspire to be. Though we are fortunate enough to have been able to take the first steps onto the housing ladder, the next step from our one-bedroom flat to a small house seems impossible. Not without suffering the huge financial stress of tripling our mortgage, the worrying of increased cost of living in Jersey, as well as saving for the future and the security in retirement. And we are not alone. Many more young islanders are facing these hardships, many without the prospect of even being lucky, as I am, as owning my own one-bedroom flat. These hardships are making many more young people look to leave Jersey for good, taking valuable skills with them, moving away from parents and families, many taking grandchildren away from grandparents. Jersey's government for a long time has put businesses and the wealthy at the heart of its policies, forgetting the people that they need to make these policies work. This is why I'm standing for Reform Jersey. Reform Jersey are the only party that has a fairer society at its very core of its beliefs. Our manifesto focuses around 9 key pledges. We want Jersey's minimum wage to become a living wage before the next term is over. We will tackle the housing crisis from week 1 with our Housing Crisis Action Plan already written and ready to implement. We want to ensure that healthcare is affordable for all. We will remove GST from food, water and other essential items. No child should ever go hungry. That is why we'll provide a hot and nutritious meal to every state's primary school student by September 2023. We will reform our tax system so that everybody is entitled to the marginal relief and reduce many islanders' tax rate from 26 to 25%. We will improve public transport so it becomes a genuine, affordable alternative to using a car. We will establish a programme to support households to transition to low-carbon heating, and we will bring back government accountability. Reform Jersey has a strong team to achieve these ambitions, but we need your help, your vote, to make this happen. So please, on the 22nd of June, vote for me, vote for Reform. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out on a Friday night. My name is Bernie Manning. I live in St Helier South District. I used to live in Hartley Park and have now moved to Marina Court on the Esplanade. I'm an active member of the local community, having served on many parish committees. At the moment, I'm on the Roads Committee, which I've been elected now for the last 3 terms, and I'm also a member of the Accounts Committee. I've stood for St Helier Deputy before. Back in 2018, I lost out by only 50 votes when I stood in St Helier District 2. Some of you may know me as chairman of the Millennium Town Park Group, which I formed back in '95, and we collected 17,500 signatures telling the states that we wanted a park built from Bar Street right across to St Saviour's Road. In 2011, the first stage was opened. Now we need to finish the project off and continue it to St Saviour's Road. I am committed to working towards a vibrant, safe and pleasant town for residents and visitors alike, as well as a fair, prosperous, caring and sustainable future. I feel there are many issues that need to be addressed, such as sustainable population, state schools to meet the needs of the community, family centres to support the families of St Helier, affordable housing, and the lack of parking available in St Helier needs to be addressed urgently, not just talking about it. These things need to be addressed. The Opera House has been left to decay for quite some time now. At the moment, when large-scale buildings are built, they have to pay a percentage towards art. Rather than paying for a piece of art that is designed from somebody living outside the island, some of that money should be filtered off to pay for art projects on the island. It's crazy having a piece of art that only the people living in those premises get to see. The government needs to help individuals and families to cope with a steep increase in the cost of living. Raising tax thresholds would put money back into islanders' pockets. I would like to see the living wage introduced. However, there would have to be a transition period to enable businesses to plan ahead. The minimum wage in Jersey is £9.22, compared to £9.50 in the UK.
Whoops.
You can find more information about my policies if you go to www.berniemanning.co.uk. Thank you very much.
Friends, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Sam Mezek, and for the last 8 years I've served as a States member, including as a St Helier deputy. On the 22nd of June, we have an opportunity to set the direction for what we want for Jersey for the next 4 years. Having been through the biggest public health crisis for a century and our second economic crisis in a decade, we must now ask ourselves, should we return to business as usual, or should we use this moment to hit reset and deliver instead something better? I'm standing now alongside a strong Reform Jersey team of 14 candidates because we believe that Jersey needs a new deal. Having seen the incredible mobilisation of efforts to get us through the pandemic, the amazing dedication of our frontline workers and our community, we should now be inspired to believe that things can be better and our government system can deliver the changes we need, if only it is led by those with the vision and commitment to do so. Before the pandemic, things were not well in Jersey. Under successive governments, we've become a more unequal society. Real terms earnings have been frozen for a decade and poverty is still increasing. We face a climate crisis and government accountability has been whittled away. The next government of Jersey must address these issues and reverse the trend of growing inequality, because if we do not do this, then our future economic prosperity is at risk. Reform Jersey stands with an election manifesto setting out in detail what our priorities will be if we're in a position to lead the next government. Our 3 headline priorities will be to create a more equal society, to prepare Jersey for the challenges of the future, and to restore government accountability and democracy. Our leaflet shows you our 9 key pledges, which all of our candidates are committed to pursuing if elected. Each of these has been properly put together to make sure that they are tangible, achievable, and affordable. Alongside Tom Coles and Beatrice Porre, I hope to serve St Helier once again, and if elected, we will champion a green and sustainable town where residents can expect to have just as good a standard of living as those who live in our wonderful countryside. A better Jersey is possible, and I hope we won't squander this opportunity to bring about a future for our island which we can have confidence in will deliver us better lives. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to have been selected by the Jersey Liberal Conservative Party, JLC, to be their candidate in the St Helier South district. JLC are a coalition with the Progress Party. The reason I put myself forward was the feeling I had as an islander
of Jersey was of how friendly people were. I was young, willing, able, and happy to work in such a beautiful island. After 4 years in Jersey, I met my husband. Together we started a family and raised our 3 children here. I live in St Helier, and I also run a business in town. For many years, I did not engage in Jersey politics. I did not understand the Jersey political system. It felt like an exclusive part of Jersey life that only some of us have access to. Moving forward a few good years, I now know that political exclusiveness is no longer part of the modern, progressive, and diverse Jersey of today. As an African, Portuguese-speaking immigrant with British nationality, I am standing for 2022 elections because I believe that Jersey political arena must change for better reflect, serve, and understand the present island diverse population. I am standing with Reform Jersey because I share the party's desire to create a more equal society with a stronger sense of inclusivity and fairness. As an elected deputy, I will work with my fellow party members and other states members to create an island that all of us should be proud of. An island where everyone achieves their potential irrespective of their color, religion, gender, physical ability, or social background. At a time where there is so much economic uncertainty, with the huge cost of living increase and the major housing crisis, it is more important than ever to look after those who earn the least. The cost of accommodation in Jersey is amongst the highest in Europe and a major cause of poverty for those in lower incomes. The present housing situation needs to be tackled if Jersey is to keep a strong workforce necessary for our economy to flourish. We need to work together to solve Jersey's biggest economical and social issues. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all for turning out on Friday night. I'm sure there's a lot of places you'd rather be. I am Chris Hopkins, and I'm currently standing for election as a deputy in St Helier South. I live in St Helier South, is my main reason for that. I've served the island for 34 years as a police officer, and later as a traffic officer for the Royal Court. I'm the Vice President of the JCSA, Prospect Union, and I was a member of the Police Association, which was in effect a police union as well. Between them I served for 22 years, assisting members who had been unfairly treated by the employment of the government. I'm now standing for election as I believe our current government is making some very poor decisions that are costing us all very dearly. You have all heard that the best vote is for a political party. I would disagree with this. No party or no combination of parties can hold the majority in the government. Therefore, if you vote for an independent candidate like myself, I will always be voting for you. I will not be voting in line with the political party. Sorry. In relation to the housing crisis, which has been very well covered this evening, it is a crisis. I've put forward 2 plans of places in town that could easily be built on, and government buildings is what I'm trying to say, can be converted into housing very quickly. They can also include a high number of electric charging points. Many of you, like myself, I'm sure live in apartments where you cannot have an electric car even if the government wants you to have it, because you literally have got nowhere to park it, nowhere to charge it. We need to consider this moving forward. Every housing project moving forward should have solar panels, solar discs on the ceilings. The tiles are now chargeable. All of this would help the environment. We have access to wind power, we have access to tidal power. All these areas need to be looked into to see if we can move forward and make the island green, not buying green from another country. In relation to immigration, at this time we've heard today from the Chamber of Commerce, there's not enough people in the island
Yeah, good evening. I'm Nicola Cornew. There is war in Europe. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is very personal because my wife is Ukrainian. Just as in Jersey in 1940, there are evacuees. In March, I brought my wife's niece and 2 grandnieces from Ukraine, together with their 2 pug pet dogs, to Jersey and to safety. The family are working. They are contributing to Jersey's economy. The 15-year-old is at Girls' College. The policy of the Council of Ministers is to permit only family members of Ukrainian residents. Only 20 Ukrainian evacuees have come to Jersey. In many ways, it's tokenism. More could come if the government adopted the sponsorship route for entry, as is the way in the UK. I see Ukrainian flags flying across gardens in Jersey. If elected, I will lobby the new Council of Ministers to ensure more evacuees can find safety here in this island. I'm an employment lawyer. I represent employees in the Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal. This specialisation developed during my time as a deputy when I was elected in 2014. Constituents needed help. I had the skills. I'm proud to have the leading case in Jersey on disability discrimination, PRIO against Valor Limited. Often I provide my services on a pro bono basis. I fill the gap in Jersey's abysmal legal aid system. I do so because I am motivated by a sense of social justice. Most of my clients work in hospitality. I have to say that some employers have a lot to learn if they're going to recruit and retrain their staff. Better treatment and better contracts are essential. 0-hour contracts, however flexible for employers, wreak havoc into workers' lives. St Helier South is essentially what the French would call a banlieue populaire. The district has 70% voter abstention. The reason is that working people and pensioners are saying to existing politicians and the political class in general that they are fed up with their social and economic interests being ignored. Poverty is the major issue. One wouldn't think so if one heard some of the candidates standing in this district. In-work poverty is an issue. Low wages are the cause. I have met many shop workers earning the minimum wage $9.22. They are barely getting by. I support the minimum wage being the living wage of £11.27. In fact, I'd go further and say that it should be £15. I've been campaigning for social justice in Jersey for over 30 years. Please elect me to the State's Assembly to continue that task. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. My name is Jo Luce, and I'm standing with the Jersey Alliance. I'm not a politician. I've never worked in government. I've supported business. I'm a mum. I'm a daughter. I'm a wife. And I work really, really, really hard. And one of the reasons that I'm here, and one of the reasons I want to be elected in District St Helier South, is because I think change is needed and change is required. And I've been concerned because, again, like B, I've been here for 35 years. I have 2 kids. I want my children to enjoy the island in the way that the island should be enjoyed. I'm an immigrant. I'm Irish. I came over here as an economic migrant. I worked in hospitality. And then I qualified, and I ended up coming into the finance industry. And because I came into the finance industry, and because I worked really, really hard and times were good, I managed to be able to afford, with my husband, to have my own home. I want my children to have that. I want St Helier District South to have that. I make no apologies. I know that the finance industry contributes 70% of the revenue that this island uses. I also know that construction contributes almost 10% of the tax revenues that this island needs. I also know in construction, 94% of people are resident and qualified to live in Jersey, which shocked me. I only found it out this week. Communication has definitely been an issue. There are huge and brilliant things happening. There has been massive levels of investment. Communication is dreadful. There are planning restrictions, which mean no matter how many people promise anything here, It will take at least 2 years for spades to be dug and property to come out and be made available. So we have to make do. We have inflationary tensions coming into our community. We have to make things work. So with that, what I would say is, why vote for me? Who am I? I've built a business. I've built that business from a very small kernel, me and half a secretary. I now have 35 people working with me. I can't work on my own. I'm no good on my own. I can only work with the team. I have to work, and I have to be accountable to stakeholders. I have to be accountable to the people I work with. I ask you to vote for me. Many thanks.
Thank you, Joe. We'll now take 2 questions, and the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer those 2 questions. So who'd like to start? The lady there on the side. Can you give your name, please? Sorry, can I stop you? Can you use a mic, please? Somebody can bring the mic to the lady. Press the button. Yeah.
Hello, hello.
And if you can pass the mic round from one to the other, so to speak. You've got it on you, well done. Thank you.
So I've just lost my question.
No, we can't hear it.
Is that working?
Thank you. My name's Penny Kent. Alongside all the other issues that obviously we all want sorted, my main thing is the cost of government. Civil servants aren't on normal money purchase schemes for their pensions. Is it true that these pensions are costing the taxpayers 100 million more than the industry standard money purchase schemes? Can anybody get into that?
The next question. Thank you, Penny. Don't be shy. Oh, the lady in front.
June Summershaw, would you, if you were elected, insist that every single state's department open their doors as pre-COVID to the public to walk in without having to make an appointment or go online or jump through hoops or wait for emails? Will you insist that those government departments do what every other business in this island is doing and open the doors to the public you serve? Thank you.
Did everybody grasp the question about pensions? Basically, as I understand, and Penny can correct me, the states are paying 100 million more because of the kind of pension scheme they run for their employees compared to the industry standard, presumably in the private sector. And June's question is that there be total accessibility in states' departments, as appeared to be the case pre-COVID. Russell.
Second question as well, please, Roy.
Okay.
Up until we had COVID, you could walk into any state's department without an appointment, and you could speak to somebody, you could get advice, you could collect information, pick up leaflets. COVID shut that down. That was a very valid reason to do so. There were many good reasons, obviously, in terms of the infection. However, most of those departments are no longer open to the public. You rely on emails, telephone calls. The waiting time is sometimes horrendous. Income tax in particular and social security are particularly bad, and I speak from experience. And therefore, when is the government going to open all the departments, as it should be, to the public who pay their wages?
Thank you for doing that for me. Thank you. There's been a refinancing of the pensions very recently, a new bond. I believe that's making a huge saving for the government on the pension scheme. I don't know the detail, but I'm sure Judy does. But I think I believe we've taken a step to save a fortune with a new bond and buying out the debt on them. The Lamott Street, being the one-stop shop for almost every government department, is part of the Charlie Parker apparatus, which I think should be dismantled along with all his reorganisation of the civil service. I think it was damaging. Take planning, for example. You used to be able to go up to the offices on South Hill, park, carry all your plans in, meet the planning officers. Now we have to have a planning officer on certain times going down to sit at Lamott Street, waiting for people to park and find somewhere to park and cart their plans into there. It's a nonsense. It's deeply, deeply troubling that the interface between government departments, the civil servants who are there to help, and the public is not satisfactory. And I think you're right. It's not good enough. So I would like to see that changed and dismantled for sure.
But will it get done? Yes.
Sorry, we better move on first. Russell, thank you. David.
Yeah, the second question first, because that's the one I know all about, because being in a service industry as we are with coffee shops, it's all about service and interacting with customers and keeping in touch with them. And it really infuriates me. It's a bit like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options and then another 5 options, then you've forgotten you pushed the wrong option and so forth and so on. So I totally get that. I absolutely think we should have these doors open, and certainly it would be one of, if I get in and it was something that I had power to do, it would be certainly that's such an important thing. I'll give you one tiny example right now. Social Security Department, which is merged with ITIS and the tax department, we're currently still waiting on a bill for the first quarter social security payments. That never used to happen. It's appalling what's going on there now. So it's gruesome out there. With regard to the pensions, my knowledge of pension schemes are very, very poor. I'm just not an expert on pensions, I admit that. The biggest concern I think I have, being in the private sector, is I know how expensive pensions are for businesses to maintain for our staff. They're almost unaffordable in our business. It's very frustrating when I see civil servants finish with 2/3 final salary and so forth and so on, given the risk they haven't taken that I have taken in our environment. So there is a big discrepancy in those things. But in terms of the technical details, I'm sorry, I can't really answer your question.
Thank you, David. Tom.
Again, first question. I'm sorry, I'm not a pensions expert, and I don't know, I'll be quite honest, I don't know what pension schemes are that our senior civil servants are receiving. Unfortunately, I've not been in a ministerial position or in government to be able to find out. However, we would make sure that these are kept in line and make sure we get the best value for money while ensuring people work within government get a reasonable pension. As for opening all the doors on all public departments, yes, it's a simple answer. We will get them reopened as soon as possible. But we'll also be able to maintain these new forms of communications, sort of with Zoom meetings and phone calls for those who don't have the mobility that don't have the ability to get to access these departments freely and easily, so we can make sure that everybody can still contact a department through whichever means that they choose.
Thank you, Tom.
I'll answer Penny's question first. I'm not an expert like Tom on the state, but during the 90s and the early 2000s, at the rates assemblies, I regularly brought up the fact that having to have a final salary pension was going to cost us in the future, and it has done. and it's still costing the parish quite a bit. Unfortunately, we were linked in with the government, and so our hands were tied. Going on to the state's offices, I would want to see them open as soon as possible. I get annoyed every time I want to go and speak to somebody about tax or my social security payments, and you just get phone calls and then have to send emails, and when you're lucky enough to make an appointment, somebody's then turned up sick, so your appointment's cancelled. I think that's completely wrong. We need to have it open fully so that you can just walk off the street and speak to somebody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bernie. Sam.
And thank you. The first question was phrased more as a question of detail rather than policy. I don't know if the exact figure quoted is the actual figure, but I do know that it is the case that the government recently restructured its pension debt because the system it had beforehand did present us with a much greater liability, and we have done something to try to mitigate that, and Reform Jersey supported doing that. To make it a comment more broadly on policy, government has always got to be prudent with public money and has to make sure that whatever structures it comes up with for paying out for services, whether it's pensions for its staff or anything else, that they've got to do so prudently, get best value for money, and when things need a restructure to make sure that we're getting best value, we shouldn't leave that too late because it exposes us to more risk then. For the second question, June, about opening government departments, I'm very pleased to say that if you go to the bottom of page 11 on our manifesto, we do say we will also reintroduce in-person appointments at the Customer and Local Services Department and introduce a crisis desk where islanders can turn to for help and advice. So we're completely committed to do that. The issue of tax has been raised. Raise your hands if you've ever had an incorrect ITIS notice and then spent weeks trying to get it corrected. Lots of us have, and it's a perennial frustration, and I often get constituents coming to me who have these issues. And it is possible for states members to attempt to fast-track some sort of solution by highlighting some of these cases to officers. But frankly, we shouldn't have to. The system should work from the outset and should be more user-friendly. And I think the ability to have a desk where you can go to and say, please, I need to talk to a human being face-to-face to understand this issue is fundamental, and we should reintroduce that.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Angela.
Again, I think, like most members here, I don't know the answer to the pension issue, and I don't know how the state's pension compares with private company pensions. I do know it doesn't compare at all with the GP pensions because we don't offer the GPs any pension at all. The states doesn't. In terms of government departments, we as candidates have done so many opening speeches, I can't remember how many now, but in one of mine I actually raised this as an issue because I think it's appalling that we cannot have face-to-face contact. We can go on the bus, we can go into shops, why can't we go into that office? I can go to the insurance company office, so why can't I go to the States Department offices? And I think face-to-face contact is extremely important. And when I was the Assistant Minister for Social Security in 2008 to 2011, I actually introduced monthly Meet the Assistant Minister meetings because I felt as
contact tax department, social security department, and it's the most frustrating thing after COVID. And I agree with you, if all of us are functioning, why is social departments such as social security, which supports so many people in the island, and tax are not on face-to-face availability of services? I know a lot of people whose English is not the first language, who have no good control of internet or ability to navigate the system, and they really struggle. And I know of people who actually go without getting their benefits because they can't go through that door. And yes, like you, I would like to see that changed. Sure.
Thank you, Beatrice. Chris?
In relation to pensions, I think this is twofold. One is that, as Russell said, it has been renegotiated. The pension pot is excessive, but it's now slightly under control. All those agreements, those pensions, were all negotiated and agreed by previous governments. And I'm not talking the last 4 years, I'm talking a long time ago. So, unfortunately, they were all covered within the law at that time. It's now been realised that the money's too much, and they're renegotiating. The sum has changed. In relation to the front door, you're absolutely right. There's 154 vacancies across the states at the moment. There's also a reasonably high number of states employees, government employees, that are still working from home. There are some employees that are working from other countries online. We don't have, at the moment, the staff to open that front door. We should have. It should be made accessible, because it's exactly the same for you as it is for me and everybody else at this table. You cannot talk to anybody without an appointment. And that is, when it's all going wrong, when you're sitting at home with no money, with nothing, you need to have that face-to-face meeting. You need it. Whether the facts and figures are immediately supplied is a different matter, but you need that personal contact, and I fully support what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Mrs. Kemp, if I were your deputy and you were a constituent, you came to me with that question, I would, of course, confess I'm ignorant of pensions in the states of Jersey. I would then go on to say, of course, I can research it. I'm capable. We would find out more, and if it's very important, we would produce and research a document that was going to be presented perhaps to a minister. And if there was an issue there that was clearly unacceptable, we would probably campaign around it. Mrs. Summers-Shaw, I fully agree. There should be more openness. It should be open. I've heard lots of people on the door saying, oh, I wish I could go down there and see someone to speak to. And these are people whose language is not, first language is not English, people who are disabled. Speaking on the telephone is extremely difficult, particularly when you're dealing with technical issues. It'd be very nice to go and sit in front of someone who would, and I've seen the social security people, some of them are absolutely wonderful at dealing with anxious individuals. They're able to calm them down so there's no fights or anything like that. And they're able to answer and provide solutions. That's what we need back again. It's essential, I think. Has COVID gone? No, I don't think so. Even knocking the doors now, it's summer. I've seen it on at least 5 doors. People have said, please don't come in, please keep a distance, and I've respected that. I think in the winter it will be back again. We've all had our boosters. Hopefully that will protect us, but who knows? Let's see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Go.
Hi. From the figures I know, I understand that the state of Jersey have close on 7,200 employees. So they're the biggest business on island. Now, they're the biggest business on island. I also understand that in the last state sitting, there was a negotiation of the pension package not real. There's a budget, and we all face having to live within that budget. And you need people who can understand that budget, who can manage that budget, who can give you certainty on what your tax money will be doing and how it will be addressed. And I think, in fairness to the government, the fact that they've taken this step, maybe a little bit late, maybe it's not clear enough, but they've taken this step, it's a good one, it should be applauded. I haven't touched on your point in relation to June, in relation to communication, people making direct contact. Absolutely, it's important and critical.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Julie.
Yes, the Chief Minister and the Treasury Minister, and he had a very good Assistant Chief Minister who'd been in pensions in the finance for many years, and he's renegotiated the deal. It's not a 4-year thing, it's going back 20, very long, lots of years, and it had to change because you've had to sort of spend money to make sure that the money paid back, and then the pension is there as well because these are people's pensions. So it's been sorted, and going forward, you know, they're trying, and most people are not getting the final, final salary scheme, but there's a few, and that's all got to be negotiated. Going to obviously I'm the Social Security Minister, and I and others, you walk in there every day, there's people on the welcome desk. CLS do not cover tax. They've been trying to get hold of tax to bring them into the fold. It's all about customer service as far as CLS is concerned, and I'm not saying tax is not, but I'm not hearing so good things. Now, I just want to go back to, and this what myself and Deputy Southern, and I know he's reformed, but myself and Deputy Southern, when we were backbenchers, for a very long time, that would be our bread and butter, sitting down there on a Monday with probably about 50 people sitting behind you, your desk is there, and you're breaking your heart and telling the lady or man behind the income support desk what disaster happened to you over the weekend, and everybody can hear you. It's really personal. It's probably a marriage breakdown. It could be a bereavement, etc., etc. But everybody could hear you. Myself and Deputy Southern begged. Now, when we took them, they'd say, okay, you can have a private room. But now all appointments are booked and they have an interpretator. And so it's not ideal, but we might have to go move it some way. But the other system was certainly not ideal either. It was very, very degrading for a lot of people.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Okay, we'll take 2 more questions. The lady in the front row.
What's happening with the Opera House? Is there a plan? What is the plan? When is it going to take place?
For the recording.
Oh, recording it, sorry. What's happening for the Opera House? Is there a plan? What is the plan? And when is it going to take place?
Okay, thank you. The next question.
Sorry, didn't catch your name, sorry. Linda.
Name, please.
My name's Emily. This is a question on behalf of my dad. Many local businesses in both the construction and hospitality sector are struggling financially due to staff shortages, resulting in shorter opening times or temporary closures, and also because of the rising prices. How are you going to support small local businesses better to prevent permanent closure of the companies, in particular to increase the workforce so that the businesses have adequate staff numbers to operate?
The lady can correct me, but I think you want to know how the government's going to deal with the shortage of staff. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, Opera House and shortage of staff.
Okay, well, yeah, staff is very close to my heart. Obviously, we employ 30 people. We're in the hospitality industry, and it's a massive challenge. What's the answer? Bring down housing costs is the answer, because people are not coming to this island or can't afford to stay on the island or emigrating away from this island, and I see this with my own team, because they can't afford to live here. It's not just simply housing, it's childcare, it's a whole range of things going on. Now, there is, I know Judy will probably say about support, income support to help some of these people. They can't get it immediately. I'd like to say relax rules, but I know this is going to cause controversy because you're talking about population policy. And it's a case of how many immigrants are we going to allow into the island, and we get into that fight as well. But the reality is if businesses cannot operate profitably and sustainably, we don't have an economy. And at the end of the day, all the nice stuff that we talk about and do and want to do is driven by economic success. So we have to square the circle in some way, shape, or form. You know, COVID has seen a lot of people go back to Poland, a lot of people go back to Portugal and never return. I was at Lamar Vineyards 2 days ago, where they've taken on a couple of ladies from Antigua to try and find out, which is fine if you can get the license. Now, the question is can we flex that more? Can we, you know, for really small businesses in construction, can they get access to some of this as well? You know, we've really got to think outside the box here, and it's not about, oh, you know, we've got too many people on the island. It's actually enabling small businesses to function and function properly. So I'd like a lot of work done on that, because we need to sort this out, and we don't need to sort it out in 6 months' time. We need to sort it out now. So it's a big priority on my list if I was to get in. Can I just very quickly say about Opera House, very quickly, sorry I didn't answer that one because the other one's very passionate about that one. Opera House, absolutely ridiculous that it's shut down. There's a huge sum of money there being put to one side. We can't seem to get it over the line. The arts are massively important. We've really got to do something about the whole arts sector and respect that. It's important to people's mental health.
Okay, thank you, David. Tom.
So on the second question about small business, unfortunately we're dealing still with the fallout of that dreaded word of Brexit. It's impacted this island on so many ways that it was so bad that we never got a say in that referendum, because the impact here has been so much higher, with our cost of living being so much higher, our hospitality industry requiring food to be able to come in, to be prepared by the quality staff that we have on island. So we're still trying to dig our way out of that problem, and hopefully with a stronger government we can push to the UK to hopefully negotiate a better Brexit deal, which will hopefully bring down the cost of importing food for a lot of these businesses. Also about freeing up people on the income support line, in something that Judy had done earlier in this year by helping pay some of the wages for the staff so they can actually go in to these businesses for a short period of time. That should be extended and continued for more people, to give them more work experience, job experience in different industries. The Opera House screams of the problem that is within Jersey Property Holdings, and lack of planning and lack of coordination. I have a friend who actually works at the Opera House, and he said that one of the plans of what they want to do will have to be done and then ripped out so they can do the other bits that need to be done as well. So I feel that there's going to be a big can of worms which is going to be open when they start, because people aren't strategically planning what they're doing with our buildings properly. And it is something that needs to be fixed from the top all the way down. So unfortunately, I don't have a single answer for the Opera House, but there is a whole problem within all of Property Holdings and many of its buildings.
Thank you. Bernie?
I'll deal with the Opera House first, as I touched on it in my opening speech. After speaking to somebody on the board of the Opera House, they told me that they were ready to run and get the repairs done straight away. But unfortunately, the government then decided that they wanted to get involved with the scheme themselves, and they wanted to relook at the schemes, re-tender for everything, and that's hold everything up. So hopefully, in the short term, we'll be getting that sorted. Come to staff shortages. Unfortunately, it's not just the lower end in retail, hospitality. There is quite a staff shortage in your hospital, childcare, a subject I do know a bit about. They keep bringing over staff that are on 6-month contracts and keep going back again because they find it too expensive to live on the island. So we're going to have to come up with some schemes for them to be more attractive. The only trouble is that means we'll be putting some of our own people out. If we're going to look at housing them are we going to say, right, we need X amount of accommodation, but we're going to bring in other people to live in these accommodations, and people are looking for decent places will go against that. I think they made a big mistake knocking down Suanamoka House. I think that would quite easily be turned into accommodation, especially for nurses. I remember when I used to work with hospitality in the 80s, when a lot of them used to have their own staff accommodation. Unfortunately, they sold off most of those premises. I think it was a big mistake.
Thank you, Bernie. Sam.
On the Opera House, the government's management of its property portfolio is pretty lousy. There are examples all across the island of sites and of buildings that are either underused or unused and falling into disrepair, which is all sorts of nightmares for government in terms of insurance and all sorts of dangers that can cause. Just around the corner is Westaway Court, which is a great example there. But the Opera House is a particularly depressing example because of how important it is for Jersey heritage and culture. And we reference this in our manifesto as a specific example that does need to be resolved, saying that we need to get a proper and suitable maintenance plan in place for these sorts of community facilities, and one that takes a long-term view as well, so we don't end up investing a load of money in it to bring it back now and then spend nothing on it for 10 years and just end up in the same situation in a future generation. I'm very pleased that our party chairperson, Lindsay Feltham, who's running in the constituency next door, has some experience of these kind of public sector management of these kind of properties from when she was a civil servant in Australia. So hopefully we've got some experience there that she can use there. In terms of small businesses and staff shortages, this is a serious problem that we're getting a lot of people in business talking to us about. And it's also a big problem in our public services as well, where some very key roles we're simply unable to recruit or retain talented people in those roles. And the big issue that comes up time and time again that is cited for this is the cost of living in Jersey, and in particular the cost of housing, where we often find good, talented and aspirational people to work in these roles, and they start out and do a good job, and within a few months they say, actually no, I'm not getting the quality of life here that I would get in other places because the cost of living is so high and the remuneration doesn't cover it. So if we can resolve the housing crisis, that will have a huge knock-on effect into the rest of the economy and hopefully act as an economic enabler there so businesses aren't suffering so much.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Angela?
On the Opera House, my understanding is that the money was there, everything was ready to go, but then the money wasn't coming forward. So if it was there and it's not coming forward, where did it go? These are the questions that I don't have the answers to, but which we should all be asking, and perhaps we should all go out with a flag outside there and say, we demand that this happens. I mean, the Opera House is a part of most families' lives here in Jersey. Either the children have done dancing, or I Stepford, or even our older members of parishes have done lots of arts and crafts things. It was so much part of a Jersey family's life. So quite why it isn't, I just don't know. Although I understand relatively recently they have said that the money is available. So watch this space is all I can say. In terms of staff shortages, it's not just Jersey that has this problem. Look at London. Look at the southeast. Look at the southwest. Look across Wales. Everybody seems to be having staffing problems. So again, that's not an easy one to answer at this stage. However, when it comes to the accommodation of staff who may come here, I have to agree with what's already been said.
longer than we think it can take. But yeah, it would be very important to see buildings in Jersey such as Opera House to be kept for the future enjoyment of all of us in the island. With regards to small businesses and staff shortage, I completely understand what that young lady has mentioned. It's been very, very difficult for small business people to recruit staff. I'm sure it's difficult for all businesses and states departments. I think when it comes to big businesses, what is not so attractive anymore for those who want to come, the qualified staff, is the high price of housing. So there is no real incentive for people to want to come here and spend some of their qualified years working in Jersey because they know they can save their money elsewhere. Small businesses, though, it's slightly trickier because I believe for some of us as a small business person, it's much, much harder to get licenses. If we even consider engaging with Social Security for a license, there is an impossibility made to go through. Yes. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, in relation to the Opera House, you've heard the same as I've heard. I've heard this a few times over the last 2 weeks. Money's there, money's not. People are making plans, people are not. Everything seems to be a mess. And you then start hearing the government have decided that they know best. Well, unfortunately, one of the main reasons I'm standing is I feel that a lot of the senior management in government are so intoxicated with their own self-importance that they are leading these projects aimlessly. They haven't got the skills. So once again, it's a mess. It needs somebody to get hold of it and deal with it. I don't know who that is. Hopefully it's me, if I'm elected. In relation to employment, again, it's been covered so many times already. Housing is a massive crisis here. We can't get affordable places for even local people to live. So if we're bringing people in, that pot gets even smaller with more and more people that you're trying to get in there. One of the issues that I feel has come over the last few weeks is that these licenses and permits are taking too long. They are too long. Agriculture have got good quality housing, but they can't bring the staff in because of the red tape set down by government. So that is where I would try and address as soon as possible. That would be a short-term fix. Long-term fix is more housing projects. Thank you.
So you've had the collective wisdom of the states members and incipient states members. I'm sure you're much enlightened on the issue. I think Sam Mezek summed it up well there. He said that the government didn't manage its properties very well. I can add to the list Fort Regent, La Folly Pub, the Picket House, which I remember was dealt with whilst I was a states member. We saved it, but what did we save it for? I'm not sure. I heard from others that there were opaque deals associated with it, but I know not. Emily, thank you for your question. I know your father runs a small scaffolding business. It was something, staff shortages was dealt with excellently this morning by Murray Norton at the Chamber of Commerce, Hustings. I would refer you to that. I think he's doing a really great job of interacting with the politicians and really tearing apart their stupidity. Brexit, of course, is the problem. Absolutely central. Right-wing Tory ideologues have really shot British business in the foot for their own political reasons. And Jersey suffering as a consequence of that. The immigration law which we have to follow is that of the United Kingdom. We have a 9-month policy for bringing over, shall we say, Kenyan workers, and I represent one who's had great difficulties associated with it. But the policy's bent, and now it's changed, it's been ameliorated. It's now 18 months, so things can change, and they've had to from necessity. A lot of skilled workers, highly skilled workers, we can think senior civil servants, doctors, surgeons, are not going to come to Jersey because it's not attractive. It's too expensive, even though like surgeons are extremely well paid. Finance gets the first div, of course, and they get all the licenses, and then everyone else comes second. I'm afraid the working class is actually leaving this island. The Portuguese, the Poles are going back home. It's too expensive. Opportunities are better where they came from. It's very sad. The island's in crisis. It's near meltdown.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Yes, I'll go down. Okay. I'm going to reverse the order, if you don't mind, Linda, because I can answer one question better and I've probably a more emotional response to the second. Okay. The big issue, happy Portuguese Day for anybody who's here, which I haven't said, but the big issue for me would be we have two areas of concern. Immigration finds it difficult to give out visas to let people in. If people come in, they need to have somewhere to live. The issue is if you're looking at new stock, it's going to take approximately 2 years for that property to come on market. That's just where we're at. So what we have to do is repurpose existing stock, and we have to sort of loosen up some of our planning regulations, and we have to, and that might lead into your point, Linda, but I'll come back to that. We've got to loosen those up, and we've got to say it's broadly acceptable in Europe, it's broadly acceptable in the UK, it's acceptable here, and we will accept it because we want to improve community and we want to improve capability. And community is having enough carers. It's being able to go out, you know, have a lovely meal. It's all the things that make Jersey fantastic. It's about people not giving out too much about the construction industry because they can't get a plumber or they can't get somebody to fix something. It's important. It's important to all of us. It's not a class war, it's just important to all of us. So that to me is critical. Then coming back, Linda, my son is coming back. He has done a degree in fine art. I would love him to arrive into Jersey, into a vibrant cultural community. I think we've work to do, and I think we need to encourage and develop that. So today we've been talking to some of the Jersey development property companies. We've also had conversations with the Jersey construction. There's lots going on, but what gets in the way, what seems to get in the way, is huge amounts of red tape, coming back to your immigration, bringing people in, and huge amounts of actually delivering supply and demand. Issues and delays with Opera House or any other thing are going to cost more. Every year they're going to cost you about 10 to 15% more. So if I can finish that point. And then because they cost more, we need to deliver them quickly, but we have to loosen some of the rules and requirements. We're just going to have to give and take on that one if we really want to deliver more homes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually on the committee, the tourism committee, when Imogen persuaded the states to refurbish the Opera House in 2002, and we were told it really needed a really good refurbishment and it would never happen again and it would be kept up, maintained, etc., etc., etc. And obviously that didn't help. Now my understanding of what has happened this time, the Opera House board put in some money from the fiscal stimulus money. It had to be quick and it had to be done in a certain amount of time. From memory, when the actual people got inside the Opera House and actually saw what the Opera House needed, they could have spent this money on doing amend, but it was not going to last. So this had to be rethought, and it's going to take longer, but it better be, well, it will be a better Opera House. But you're right, we need a proper property holdings and maintenance budget to keep it as it is, as it was when it came back splendidly in 2002. It was beautiful. On the unemployment, everybody's spoken to this. The construction industry, we met with them, we met with hospitality, we had a speed date type of thing. Retail, everybody is really crying for staff. I've got the lowest unemployment, the island's got the lowest unemployment we've ever had since records begin. We've got 500 people who are not doing any work. out of the 103,000 people we have. They've got different issues. We've got some people who are doing part-time work, but that's all we've got. That is all we've got that are registered down on my social security. And also it's about the living. We found out, because we were on Haywag, where a lot of these people live are registered lodging houses, and they've lost 12, and that's dispersed 455 people. We need to rethink where these people can live.
Okay, thank you, Judy.
What's so frustrating is that at a time when the theatre has to close its doors because of the pandemic and go dark, and that's going to take some time to recover, that the work wasn't done during that period. And so I'm as frustrated as you. You know, the Opera House is very dear to my heart. The 2002 refurbishment was wonderful, but maintenance should have been spent on the building every year since that. So the second question goes right to the heart of the problems the island faces right now. We're in a cost of living crisis, and it's going to get worse. And traditionally, the best way out of a cost of living crisis is for growth in the economy. Now, how are we going to grow our economy if so many businesses can't recruit staff, can't retain staff, can't accommodate staff? And government has to do better. And I think turning the 9-month licenses into 2-year licenses needs to be done as a matter of urgency. The 9 months isn't working. I think the last planning minister resisted this, but I think the new one is going to have to work. Industry, the hospitality industry has money, it wants to invest in staff accommodation. It has some sites. It's asking for a new categorisation of accommodation for seasonal workers, transient workers. As long as that is safe and not substandard in any way accommodation, it might be different. As long as it's, as I say, not substandard and good and right, but don't forget, they don't want to pay a fortune on rent. They're coming here to earn big bucks as much as they can and take it home or send it home. So that's two possible solutions there. And housing is at the key of all of this, especially retaining our key workers in health, in children's services. We've got to be better at the providing key worker houses, and we've got to take a good, hard look at measure our own standards and what we would expect and what we're asking others to come here and experience and put up with.
Okay, Russell, thank you. Okay, we'll take 2 more questions, please. The lady there and then the gent there.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I want to ask what the panel are going to do, especially in relation to mental health issues for young children, in light of a number of terrible recent events that have happened that will make those services more available, effective and timely for the children and young people that need them.
Okay, thank you. And the gentleman there.
Thank you. My name's Andy Harris. You'll all be aware that in May last year we had a situation where French fishing boats came and blockaded Jersey's ports. And following that, there's been ongoing disputes regarding fishing rights in Jersey waters. Obviously, French fishing boats want to have more rights to fish, and Jersey fishermen are having to pay quite high fees in order to fish, whereas I understand that's not happening to French fishing boats. The French are preventing Jersey fishermen landing their catches in France, and they have, on at least one occasion, threatened to cut off our electricity supply to the island. I'd like to hear what candidates' views are on Jersey relations with the French and how this should be dealt with going forward.
Okay. The first one, the lady asked, and she can correct me, what is your attitude towards the development of children's mental health services in the light of the many reviews that have taken place? Okay, so we'll start with Tom.
Thank you, Carol, for this question, because mental health is going to be a big problem for lots of people if we carry on with the stresses and struggles that the cost of living and housing prices are causing. It will cause more problems, it will cause more trauma to affect young people growing up, and it's something that we have to be prepared to deal with prepared to prevent first and foremost, hopefully by improving standard of living for so many. In regards to mental health, we have to change how our mental health service works, rather than it being simply small amounts of sessions with counsellors. There's different types of counselling, but our government focuses mostly on CBT. There is other things like therapeutic counselling, and talking therapies, and to get more young people to engage with these earlier. It might sound daft, but actually providing the free school meal to primary school children is one less stress that may reduce the impact that they are having on their lives. It's a very complex issue. It is an issue that needs funding, and it needs appropriate funding with appropriate skills and appropriate therapists carrying out these sessions. Regards to the fishing rights, again, I didn't think I would be here, so going on about Brexit again, but we were, British and the French had a good relationship for many, many years in interacting within our waters. The French fishermen, the English Jersey fishermen were allowed to land their catches in France. Brexit put a stop to that. The negotiations between fishing rights were going on between Jersey and France, and then the UK stepped in and started negotiating on our behalf, which seemed to make matters worse. I also found it very interesting that Boris Johnson sent 2 warships to our waters, which was more than they sent during the Second World War. What I would like is for Britain to sort of step out of some of our negotiations and let Jersey negotiate back with the French, because we've had a good relationship with them. We should maintain that good relationship.
Thank you, John.
I'll answer Carol's question first, the children mental health. Well, there's loads of different schemes that we could be adopting, but we're not. Some of it's due to costs, and some of it's due to staff shortages. But we need to be throwing more money at mental health, not just for children, for adults as well. Because with the standard of living that a lot of people are suffering with at the moment, there could be more and more people suffering with depression and various other mental issues. When it comes to the licensing of the French fishing boats, which Andy asked about, I think it's grossly unfair that Jersey boats have to pay thousands of pounds for their license and the French boats don't. I think we should be on a level playing field. If they don't have to pay for a license, then why should our fishermen be paying for a license? I think that's completely wrong. One of the problems I think we might have, though, if we did start charging them for their licenses, will they start blockading our fishing boats again? That's one of the downsides. But I think if we all got around the table, the French and the Jersey fishermen, without the UK, and sort out our own fishing rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. I'll be honest and say I don't have a huge amount more to add to what Tom Coles said, because I unsurprisingly agreed with everything that he said. But I guess just to add a couple of points to it, our school funding system is very inequitable, and for some of the schools where there is the greatest need for additional support for the children there, some of those schools are actually the ones that have the least funding per pupil, and that is clearly inappropriate and wrong, and creates a very uneven playing field when what we want is for our children at school to have best opportunities and to thrive and fulfil their potential. And the schools will often know which of their students are struggling and which could do with some extra support, and many of them will struggle to acquire that support because they either don't have the funding in the school, or because, and you used the word timely in your question, because there's a massive waiting list for a young person, and that is absolutely tragic, because when mental health difficulties start arising, you want to nip them in the bud as soon as possible, because they can become devastating the longer that you wait. So part of that solution, to add to what Tom said, is that we need a much more equitable funding system of our schools so that they can have in-school support for those young people, and that it can be timely and accessible. On the fishing dispute, I have to admit I'm of French heritage myself, so I hate the idea of Jersey and the UK for that matter, not having good relations with France. And these people are our neighbours, and we should be able to have open communication and a mutual understanding about what's fair and what's right. And some of the responses that came from French government officials was extremely unhelpful, and comments about cutting off the electricity were frankly ridiculous, and there are all sorts of commercial reasons why that couldn't happen, and it was not an appropriate way to act on this. So a big thank you goes to the internal Tory party politics which got us to this point because of Brexit, but I think a greater voice from the government of Jersey speaking on behalf of that part of our economic sector and those people in Jersey working there, so that we can get a fair and level playing field, so that that part of the industry is treated fairly, has got to be something that the next government pursues.
Thank you, Sharon. Angela?
In terms of mental health services, it has always been the Cinderella service. I cannot ever remember it being anything else, not just in Jersey, but in the UK as well. I wouldn't differentiate between CAMS or general psychiatric care. Then I would say that, wouldn't I? My background is as a psychiatric nurse, amongst other things. One of the biggest problems is continuity of care for those who are in receipt of the mental health services. And in particular in Jersey, from what I have gathered through the medium mostly, we haven't been retaining staff. But there is an international shortage of health professionals, and the psychiatric services is no different to any of them. We don't have a magic wand, but as somebody has already said, the access should be available for the young ones in the schools. The teachers are the ones who see them all the time. There should be a ready access to somebody who's qualified to deal with the difficulties the teacher is identifying with these children, or these children can self-refer. It makes no odds, so long as they are getting the care they need. That was a quick.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Beatrice?
With regards to mental health issues, it is a big problem in the island. It's a problem that affects many more people than we care to admit. Mental health issues comes from, it's got a big spectrum. It affects people, say for instance, as has been mentioned before, people who are suffering financial stresses, accommodation stresses, job situation stresses. Those are issues that bring a lot of mental health issues to everyday people. But we have the most chronic mental health problems that we can try and prevent them being developed further by picking up on youngsters, the first instance when people start suffering from mental health issues. So yeah, the young people are at the age where if you have major issues and it's not dealt with, it will tend to trigger. I don't think there is enough money that the state of Jersey does put on to look after mental health people. It doesn't really help the situation. It affects the patient, also as the family. It affects their ability to move forward with their life, to be independent in their own way, and to be part of that society. So the government really has to look into mental health issues in the same way as any physical illness, and really put that money in the budget for the intervention. So when people have mental health issues that have been triggered, they can be assessed by practitioners, and they can be supported in their illness. our fishing rights between France and Jersey.
Thank you, Beatrice. Chris?
Yeah, I'll go to the fishing rights first, because you're missing out. I don't have a great deal of knowledge of what's gone on. I'm fully aware that it's an unfair playing field, and that is what we should all be about. As has been mentioned, everyone should pay the same amount of money to fish in the same amount of water. That should be simple, but I've no doubt it will take a great deal of negotiation. As Sam has said, all the threats of cutting the power off, that was blowing in the wind, to be honest, in relation to that. In relation to mental health, I'm aware that the CAMS senior doctor has now changed a few months ago. I'm aware that he is an extremely highly qualified chap, and he is doing his best to bring Jersey standards up to that of anywhere else in the world. Biggest troubles he's having, as we've heard so many times tonight, he can't get staff. When he inherited the department, he'd lost a lot of his best nurses, his best psychiatrists. He'd lost all that, and now he's trying to rebuild it. Every time they go out to try and bring people in, every time they advertise employment, it keeps coming back to they can't afford to live here. There's no quality of life for them, so how can they help young people if they're suffering themselves? So the biggest issues, I'm afraid, in relation to CAMS, yes, there's mental health, medical, but keeping the staff or replacing the staff who are all gone are the biggest issues there. At the moment, some of the social workers that work for the children's service, the locums are coming in on sometimes as much as 3 times the wages. So the money's there. It's not a money issue, it's a staffing issue. However much money you throw at mental health, if you haven't got the staff to help the people, it's not going to make any benefit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Nick?
Mental health is one of those issues. It's a bit like children and their care. Government doesn't really care. It's all show, facade. They're not doing anything about it because it's related to poverty. It's not something the elites want to address, is it? We know that. They won't put the resources in. Here's a story, an anecdote from the doors. I knock on the door, and a voice from behind says, "Oh, don't come in, I'm naked. Wait a minute." So I wait the appropriate minute, knock again, and the voice says, "Come in." I enter, and it's a room, empty, bar 4, a mattress on the floor, a small table with butts in it, which have been rolled up into rollies. Nothing on the window, no curtains, nothing on the walls. And a man sat in an armchair with a duvet wrapped around him. The first thing, of course, I notice is the stench of stale urine and smoke. He's a man about 40, an absolutely lovely man. We have a crazy conversation, and after about 5 minutes, I retreat because I realise, and I'm in pain and suffering, I can't do anything about this poor chap. I really cannot do anything to help him. It's very sad. As for the French, well, we were the victim, of course, of EU-UK brinkmanship and lots of rhetoric. Again, thank you, Brexit. We're on the front line. Yes, it's important to keep a good relationship with the French, absolutely. But look on the bright side. Look, the French market's back. The Italian guy who sells pate and things in the market, our market, can't find any French pate at all. But what have I found this morning? Pate, rillet de porc, saucisson sec. Heaven.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Julie. Oh, sorry, my apologies.
Sorry, it's all right. It was down here. Okay. If we talk to the fish, what I would say, you've got a trade negotiation, and you've got to the French and the Jerseys ultimately get on well. Don't let Brexit get in the way. Diddly squat. You know, that's just male posturing a load of warships in the channel. And fundamentally, everybody, or a huge number of Jerseys, love fish. We put up the price, we get the premiums up, and we make it work. That's a practical, effective way. That's what has to happen. If you just escalate one fight with another fight, you don't win. And we've got to support you, and we've got to get you into the right place so fishermen actually win. Not win, but get back your good trading history. That's important. That's what needs to happen. And there is a lot of good work being done. There's a lot of entente cordiale, and I say that married to a half-French husband. So I try very hard to have that in my own life. So that's what I would, if it were me, that's what we can do. You can have a fight and jump behind Boris Johnson's tails. Who cares? You're better at it, and you're better at doing that, and you're better at building those relationships. Get government to help you, do trade negotiations, and get it back. That's what I would do. In relation to the point you made, Sarah, around how young people are helped, I think the point's being made by the panel. I think there's basic principles. I think young people are stressed and pressured and tense on this island. They don't know about a number of things. I think communication sometimes is shocking. And I think what we need to do is we need to empower parents. It's not all teachers' fault. It's not something all teachers can find. Some can, some won't. I think we've got to give parents, we've got to give the caretakers, we've got to give the teachers, and we've got to give the system the support it needs. I don't think kids will self-refer if they're under stress and under pressure. I think they'll go the opposite. And I'm going to continue on that. And so for me, I think what we've got to do is we've got to accept elements of our community are broken. We've all got to help our young. That's absolutely critical to me. So giving support, getting the right people, getting houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie.
Yes, thank you. Again, I think it's a bit like when Russell said, you know, we knew something was coming. We've always had a problem with CAMS and having enough staff there, and we've gone through COVID. We were talking to children. I was doing the community task force, and we had people coming in telling us how children were feeling. Their world was turned upside down. And then after COVID, and it is what it is, some of the more people and parents who were just pushed in together, more marriages were splitting up. And that's another thing that the children are having to deal with. And they've brought back what I call family support workers, which are in the home, giving practical help, just maybe helping mum do this, trying to keep her on an even keel, or dad, if he's been left with the children. And then the children are assessed, but they're there in their own homes. They may need extra support, but when you can get in early, there's always this saying, is it best to have the fence at the top of the cliff or the safety net at the bottom? We actually need both at the moment because we are so far behind, and we could have been working this out in COVID, but we can't get the staff. We gave the Jersey Diabetes Society money for a counsellor for children, because when young children get type 1, it's a real change to their life, and they counsel all the children and they talk to the families, and it's not going to change your life. You can live with it well. There's athletes that do it and everything. I think that post, and not just us, the Diabetes Society, we're trying to fill that for over 18 months. The money is there. So it's not just us, but you know, I think the family support workers should, you know, be much more intense, get in much earlier, and work with the families.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Russell.
I hope it's not too much of a deviation from your original question for me to take this tack. I'm really worried that from Green Street down to St Saviour's Road, all the way down to the Play.com site, that those areas are being asked to take density without the equivalent amenity. And I worry about the built environment, the St Helier is so vital to all of us. It deserves better. It deserves a vision stretching further into the future. That vision is in two parts, about the type and quality of homes we are building for families and the spaces around them. There is, good news on the horizon. I think Andy have done some good work with the brewery site. In fact, the old brewery building itself has been a youth facility, is going to be in that. And of course, the old Sans Souci building is going to be refurbed and be an autism centre. So these are, I'm the Minister for Housing and Communities, and building housing is about building communities. And I feel Andy are doing good work there, and they're emanating from that development are green, cleaner, nice pathways to travel around, and this is also why it's so vital we double the size of the park by extending it onto the whole of Gas Place, because those sort of environments, creating great environments, doesn't need to cost a lot of money. It just needs a good visual eye for what works well and what looks good, and that's going to improve everybody's well-being, I think. It's probably more important that I listen to you about fishing and how these problems are resolved than you have to listen to me about it. But there's no doubt we're being, because of Brexit, we're being asked to suffer, and the fishermen are catching it. I don't know the answers, but maybe if we can convince them that we weren't part of Brexit and get the Jersey fishermen talking to the French fishermen, it might be better than what's happened so far.
Okay, David.
Okay, two areas. I mean, a lot of it's been covered here. Chris has been talking about the money, the lack of ability to get staffing and things like that. I'm concerned on the mental health side of things. Russell's alluded to it, space. We need public spaces, good communities. I'm about one St Helier, many communities. When we do buildings and we think about St Helier, someone talked about Havre des Pas. They have a wonderful park on the side of there at South Hill, which is in wreck and ruin at the moment and hopefully going to be redeveloped. We need to think about every element of St Helier in that way as a whole community. So that's one way. So for me, about mental health, it's about stopping the causes in some way, shape, or form. Start at the bottom, okay? So for instance, 0 to 3-year-olds, we talked about 80% of all brain development happens between 0 and 3-year-olds. That's really important then to look after them, make sure they're okay. I see in my own staff, we have a couple who have a child and they have no childcare facility. They have to pass that child from pillar to post. Once one finishes the shift, the next one takes over and carries on like that. I mean, this is insane. This is about housing costs, it's about cost of living. So huge issues there. I just want to, there's a whole load I can say on that. I just want to come back into the fishing dispute. And you also mentioned about the electricity. Isn't this about security? Isn't this about the idea that we never thought Russia would invade Ukraine? We never thought, the French would be threatening to cut off our electricity supply. This is about about our own supporting ourselves. There's a setup being called the Jersey Food Systems at the moment, talking about food systems and food security at the moment. I think we're going to be looking an awful lot more now at how secure we are at feeding ourselves and looking after ourselves. I think it's a huge body of work which is going to be going forward, and I think it's a really important one because in such an uncertain time as this, Jersey has to start looking out for itself and those people within it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. We haven't got an awful amount of time left, and I would suggest that we just ask one further question, one that can be answered, famous last words, in a fairly straightforward fashion. The lady behind the gent put her arm up first. Have you already asked a question? Yeah, I'll have to ask the gent in front of you then to step into the void, so to speak.
Hi, I'm Alex. Just looking at the various policies, particularly around healthcare. I work with numbers. How are you going to afford this?
Sorry, can you repeat it briefly?
Basically, around healthcare, there's a lot of promises on the policies, and how are you going to afford this? Previously living in the UK, to get a free GP appointment, I paid a draconian tax in excess of 50%. It's going to be difficult to attract the people that you want to the island, if that's the direction of travel. So how are the panel going to pay for these healthcare promises?
Okay, thank you. I think the gentleman, and he can correct me, is asking where you're going to get the money from to provide for the healthcare promises you are making. There will be 1 minute only for each answer this time. Bernie.
As I'm not already a sitting minister or deputy, it's hard to figure out where the money is coming from. But I think one of the things we need to do is reform the tax system so that the middleman's not being squeezed so much and we can get a bit more out of the super rich that are coming over here nowadays. Whatever way we fund the health system or any other system in the government has to be done fairly without too much burden on the middle and lower income. That's really all I can say at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Bernie. Sam.
There's 3 ways that we can provide more funding for our health system. The first is the obvious one that you're probably all thinking, which is that the government does waste a huge amount of money. We spend extortionate amounts on consultants because politicians lack the conviction to actually make decisions and prefer to outsource it. There's a lot of time and money that could be saved in government if we had a more effective and accountable government system. And I'm hoping that the next government will do that by having a greater presence in that government of political parties that have clearer manifestos and will spend less time talking amongst themselves about what they might do and instead actually get on with it. That will save some money. Secondly, we need to reform our tax system. Reform Jersey has proposals on this, and I can absolutely assure you that the vast majority of people under our proposals will pay less, not more. It's only the super wealthy that would pay more. And lastly, you spend money on preventative healthcare, you're investing in your future, and that brings down costs in the long term because you treat people at the start of their illnesses, not when it's expensive in the latter stages.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Angela?
I think one of the easiest ways, without doing too much about it, is we can look at the actual structure of our health service. And I think, as somebody's already said, less bureaucracy. The superstructure in management within the health department would sink any ship. If we could reduce that management level and have better clinical levels, I think we can actually deal better with our health. I think Jersey Liberal Conservatives, the last commitment they give on health is to have a fully independent review of all services provided by health and community services. And I think if we could do that, we could probably deliver far better healthcare.
Thank you, Angela.
I have to agree with Sam on this one. I think one of the best ways for us to find the money to subsidize health care is to actually look into the tax situation and how we all pay tax now, and look seriously into tax the super rich, because the money is there and it should be there to help all of us. That's how I honestly feel about it. And again, I do agree that if we use that money to support people now rather than allow them to become unwell, the state of Jersey is actually saving money by dealing with it now rather than allowing people to become more chronically ill.
Thank you, Beatrice. Chris?
Yes, we're not going to be making health free. I don't think anyone can promise you that within this island. But what it needs to be means tested. It needs to be, Social Security needs to be picking up the bill for the people that can't afford it. If you make it all free, then literally the people that have got more than enough money to support it themselves, they'll still get it free. So I would means test it. In relation to the hospital and the management, and as Sam mentioned and management across the states, there is a massive amount of waste of money. The amount of money being spent on locums, short-term, part-time staff to come over here because we haven't managed our own staff, we haven't maintained our own staff, we haven't supported them, so they've gone. We now have to buy them in at a far higher price. If you get that under control, then there'll be more money for the training and the subsidies that I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
So what we see is the price of actually hosting the finance industry, in that we can't raise as much money as we would like to fulfill all those promises which are being made, because the island is restricted by that very industry which is producing such wealth, but we don't get very much of it. Since the introduction of 0, 10, 20, the incidence of taxation has gone off companies and on to labour, to the employees of the finance industry primarily. So they're paying to keep the finance industry here. And what we need to do is, of course, tax the rich and also tax companies once again to find a way of raising revenue. Of course, there's money wasted. We know that. We can deal with that. But we must raise sufficient taxation. They're about to embark on a hospital, £1 billion and plus. Wow. So they're going to spend a lot of money. There need to be people in there with oversight. So that's all held to accountability. It's 40 million spent so far, not a sod turned. Something's very wrong. Thank you.
Okay, Nathan, thank you. Jill.
Yeah. Okay. If the hospital costs £1 billion now, it'll cost more because inflation's going up. We're saving £1 billion on pensions. First of all, just let the hospital proceed. It's critical. There are vulnerable people who are being damaged as a result. Simple strategies I would look at: encouraging the finance industry to pay private. Most of the finance industry has private healthcare. Strip it out of an already tired and existing system, of course. But you need to budget. There is no magic money tree that's going to come down and pay for everything everybody wants. You have to budget. You have to decide what's really critical. What's really critical: children, vulnerable, those who don't have enough. Then you balance the books and you make it get paid for. That's what you need to do. More talking, less walking. Many thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Judy.
Yes, to retain staff, I do think I was Assistant Minister in 2010 and was told we desperately need a new hospital. Infection control, everything in that hospital is not good, and the staff are fed up with it. It's just not a practical hospital. We need to get on with that. I do pay. We've got a scheme, the Health Access Scheme, for the lowest paid on the island. They pay nothing if you're a child up to 17 years old, and you pay £12, and that's for everything. There's no surprises. The doctor might want to take a blood test, he might want to take another test, and you don't pay another penny. It's the £12 when you go. I'm now looking at the people just above that, working with the doctors. They've got a £9 million just the other week, just before PERDA, and that's to encourage them to have nurse practitioners who will take bloods, etc., blood pressures. When you go and you don't need to pay the doctor, you'll be paying a lower price for the nurse.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Russell?
Well, the questioner referred to the issues with recruiting staff. I think if you're a medic in the UK, one of the biggest disincentives to come to Jersey is the general hospital. They don't want to work there. And when I hear candidates and parties talk about a pause in the hospital project or a review for the hospital project, pause and review equals delay. That's going to equal millions more pounds. It must send shivers down the spines of the current doctors and nurses and porters and what have you who are working under terrible conditions in that hospital already. It must send shivers down their spine to think that actually new candidates and all parties are thinking about more delay on the hospital project. How bad does it have to get? There's sewage already running down the walls at times in that building. It's not on. We need to get on and build that hospital.
Thank you, Russell.
Oops. Thank you, that. Why is no one talking about the economy? As Bill Clinton famously said, it's the economy, stupid. The way the bills on this island are paid by economic activity. We need to make sure that our economy is strong, robust. We start thinking about diversifying our economy. We've been listening to people talking about digital economy, the film economy, agri-tech, fintech, green investments. We've even got the hemp industry on here. I absolutely agree. This gentleman here has basically said, how are we going to afford it all? Well, we afford it by having a successful, strong, sustainable economy. That's how we afford it. We can't kid ourselves that we can reduce healthcare. As this sort of generation, I'm one of them, I'm trying to think, baby boomers, that's the word I'm looking for, come through the system. In 20 years' time, we're going to have some major issues, and we're all going to be requiring additional health care to do, and somebody has to pay for that, and that requires the economy to be very, very strong. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Tom?
Yes, so thanks for Sam for leaving me some bit of way how we can pay for these things. So one of the key is social security contributions. At the moment, the employer's rates are capped along with the employees' rates for the higher rates of social security. Reform Jersey proposed removing the caps to the employers' contributions, not the employees, but the employers, so that these companies who pay their staff over £250,000 will contribute more to our social security fund without it impacting directly into the employees. This will help generate funds to start paying for additional services. As Sam also said about reducing waste within our government structure, the fact that we waste so much money on consultants, reviews, consultations to go back to review again to get another consultant in who disagreed with the first one. So if we can cut these, we pay our civil service a huge amount of money. Why aren't they doing the work that they are actually paid for? So there we go.
Okay, thank you, Tom. And that does bring the evening to an end. So I'd like on your behalf to thank the candidates. It takes a certain amount of courage to stand up here and to expose your views. So thank you very much indeed, and I wish them all luck. We can't all win, but I wish them all luck. And I'd like very much to thank you all for attending, particularly the young people. There's quite a good show of young people here, and there's been a theme that they're not attending. So it's been very good to see them. So thank you very much. We hope you'll all turn out to vote. We hope you'll get your friends to vote. There are sort of ominous feelings about that at the moment. And we'll wish you good night. Thank you.